You know, I had a whole outfit planned for this, but if the writers aren't gonna put any effort into this movie, why should I? Before I even touch spoilers, I do want to give some general thoughts about the movie first. Specifically, Cruella is a surprisingly fun film. It's a visual standout against the backlog of kind of hideous remakes Disney has been putting out in the last few years. Jenny Bevan, the costume designer, actually worked on the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes movies, and she even won a BAFTA for her work on Mad Max Fury Road. She has a lot of experience creating and designing these super out there and fantastical costumes, and it shows. At times, it does feel a little more like a fashion show than a movie, but that is not necessarily a bad thing. The casting choices feel as though they were based more on the actor's actual skill as opposed to name recognition, something that I personally feel has fallen out of favor with quite a few studios in the last few years. And there are some points in the film where I can only applaud Emma Stone or Emma Thompson for delivering their lines with a straight face. What I'm really trying to say is, Cruella is the Suicide Squad of Disney movies. You can tell the entire budget was spent on the soundtrack and little else. There's great characters backed with awful writing, and the only thing the audience is gonna remember by next year is, well, the outfits. The character of Cruella is a completely different animal than the villain most of us grew up with. Her original appearance and overall vibe in the 1961 animated film was actually based on classic Hollywood icon Tallulah Bankhead, who's most well known for her love of sex, cocaine, and going commando. In the 1996 live-action remake, Glenn Close brought her own spin to the character, while still maintaining her adoration of high fashion and fur.
It's my only true love, darling. I live for fur. I worship fur. After all, is there a woman in all this wretched world who doesn't?
I really don't know what Emma Stone's basis for the character was. As fun as it was, a lot of the choices made no sense, and she talks in catchphrases the entire time. It kind of makes Cruella feel more like an edgy fashion doll than anything else. Given that Cruella is mostly set in 1974, I was immensely confused from the first press release. The original film was set in the 60s, although it could be argued that it took place earlier, considering it was adapted from Dodie Smith's 1956 book, 101 Dalmatians. It is common belief that a prequel, or a sequel, should work as an extension of an already previously released story. However, Disney never seemed to get that memo. The film starts with Cruella's birth, and then promptly skips forward to 1964, where she is immediately reintroduced as Estella, a creative yet troubled youth. She's super into fashion, and historically speaking, way ahead of her time. Of course, gratuitous narration ensues. After getting kicked out of school, Estella's mom takes her to an over-the-top fashion show, but not before gifting her a necklace, something that she explains is a MacGuffin. I'm sorry, I mean family heirloom. Her mother is then shown talking to Emma Thompson's character, the Baroness, asking for money, only to immediately get thrown off a cliff by Dalmatians. Yeah, Dalmatians killed her mother, not just a funny Twitter joke. Estella ends up on the run and arrives at Regency Park Fountain in the middle of London. And by the way, she shows up surprisingly unscathed considering how many bushes she had to run through and trucks she hid in. She's quickly adopted by two other not quite Dickensian orphans, Jasper and Horace, who take her in and help her dye her hair to prevent anyone from recognizing her. We then skip forward to 1974. Ooh. I don't know why I did that. Estella and her merry band have been committing crimes together for the past decade, with our now redheaded protagonist designing and sewing disguises for them. Jasper reveals that he fudged her resume and ended up getting her hired by the swankiest department store in town. It's not all it's cracked up to be. She's stuck scrubbing toilets and being verbally shot down by her fuddrucker of a boss every 5 minutes. In the only scene in this film that actually deserves a PG-13 rating, Estella steals her boss's booze, gets trashed, and then uses trash to build a whole new window display in the front window of the department store. Of course, the Baroness shows up, notices her, and gives her a job as a designer. If only it were that easy. Maybe I would have finished school. I would like to take a moment to mention that the Baroness is totally a stand-in for Vivienne Westwood, the grandmother of the punk aesthetic, who is also known for not wearing underwear. She actually bragged about going commando while meeting the Queen of England. The Baroness's introduction via Baroque and Rococo-inspired fashion show just screams mid-90s Vivienne Westwood. Estella grows on the Baroness, who recognizes her talent and chutzpah. Although, surprise, the Baroness has the necklace. She claims it's her family heirloom and that an employee of hers stole it from her years ago. Of course, this spurs Estella into reconnecting with her bratty childhood alter ego, Cruella. And they plan an over-the-top heist to steal the necklace back at the party of the year. Of course, this goes about as well as you expect it to when they tell you the entire plan beforehand. Horribly. It goes horribly. It goes horribly, horribly wrong. They don't get anything that they came for. They stick a dog in a rat costume to trick rich people into thinking there are rats at the party. And, oh yeah, a Dalmatian swallows the necklace? A Dalmatian swallows the necklace. And a Dalmatian killed her mother. I'm seeing a theme here, are you? So she steals a car and speeds away. And this is actually one of my favorite character moments. In the original animated film, Cruella is a hopeless driver. She's completely reckless, and it illustrates perfectly how little she cares about other people. In this film, though, it just feels like a callback without any real purpose. The next hour and a half is effectively just elaborate heists and them yucking with the Baroness in a pursuit of revenge, which, okay, I'm not fully sure what their end game is here. I'm not sure if they're trying to put her out of business or something, but that's all fine. I don't want to ruin the entire movie here, so I'm not gonna get into all the little bits and pieces. Look, as bad as the storytelling is in this movie, the fact of the matter is it's still fun, and if you're interested in watching it, you totally should. Some brief things to mention from this part I'm glossing over is basically Cruella shows up, overshadows the Baroness at her own events, and immediately disappears moments later. And the big one. Cruella stages a guerrilla fashion show in Regency Park and debuts a Dalmatian print coat to trick the Baroness into thinking that she killed her dogs. I need to mention the Dalmatian coat because in the grand scheme of things, it makes no yuckin' sense. Cruella, in both the animated film and the live action one, doesn't have this larger goal from the beginning of making a Dalmatian coat. It's something that kind of happens, it's like an idea she gets on a whim that becomes an obsession. There's no reason for this. This makes no sense. Oh, also they reveal that the Baroness was Cruella's birth mother the whole time. As it turns out, the Baroness is a raging narcissist that hated the idea of being pregnant to begin with, gave birth, told her servants to kill the baby, and then told her husband that the baby died, and then he dies of grief. Look, I get why they made this decision, story-wise, for the Baroness. It really sucks that in most films, books, and TV shows, the characters, and especially the women, who don't want kids or don't like kids, are written as villains or miscreants and are demonized for it. We really should be past this in general, and it just it's ridiculous that we're still relying so heavily on this trope, and it makes it extremely hard for people in real life to actually be open about that kind of thing. And I don't know, I'm a little disappointed in that. It's just ridiculous for all of these people to be demonized for something that really is no one else's business. At the same time, the Baroness's reaction to finding out that she was pregnant is probably super relatable to a ton of people.
So when she found out she was pregnant...
I'm pregnant.
She wasn't exactly thrilled.
So the film ends with Cruella standing over her own grave and taking Hellman Hall, aka the Baroness's huge estate and future puppy napping hostage location, as her own home. Cue sympathy for the devil, because none of these writers have ever heard of subtlety. Oh, it's also revealed that the Baroness's only named Dalmatian, Genghis, is now pregnant. Of course, the film isn't really over until they hit us with those mid-credits scenes. Oh boy, are they something. So first off, the protagonists, the human protagonists of the original 101 Dalmatians, Anita and Roger, yeah, they're in this movie. Not in any way that actually makes sense, but you know, they're there. They're gifted Dalmatian puppies by Cruella in boxes. And there's these cards in the boxes that say like, hey, meet Pongo, meet Perdita. And if these names are familiar to you whatsoever, you know, because those are the dog protagonists of 101 Dalmatians. Again, it is implied, or maybe it's just outright stated, given the flow of the movie, that Genghis was having puppies. Now these people have puppies. You know, the two dogs that get married in that movie. The two dogs that end up becoming parents to the other 99 Dalmatians. Were siblings the whole time? What? Again, I need to ask, did these writers think any of this through? At all? Disney, did you intend to make 101 Dalmatians incestuous? Because that's what you did. Well, that's what your writers did, but still, that's what happened. So yeah, if you can't tell, my biggest issue with this film is the complete avoidance. And I do mean avoidance. They're not just ignoring continuity, they are avoiding it entirely. Oh my god. My other issue with the mid-credit scene, I mean, look, it's not... Nothing about this movie will be as infuriating to me as the dog incest, but Roger sitting down and writing Cruella de Vil as part of the credit scene makes no sense. In the original film, it's his breakout song that he uses to make money and afford 101 dogs. But you see him actually write that song in that movie. Anita being friends with Cruella, like starting from elementary school, actually is an allusion to the original film as well, where the only real nod we get to why they're friends is that Roger refers to Cruella as your devoted school chum, or something along those lines. I might be paraphrasing. Anita actually defends Cruella, saying she's an eccentric, not a thief. She trusts her friend until she has a reason not to. So, the Cruella film, which shows Cruella constantly doing crimes and roping Anita into borderline crimes. What? Oh, and another thing about the animated film, Cruella straight up buys 84 puppies. She only steals Roger and Anita's 15 puppies out of spite. Meanwhile, the 1996 film shows Roger as a one-man video game developer. Impressive, I know. And Anita as a fashion designer working under Cruella's label. Cruella takes a vested interest in Anita for designing a Dalmatian coat inspired by Perdita, shoving herself more and more into her personal life, and trying to get closer to the dogs that she'd eventually hire other people to kidnap. Of course, this version of Cruella is shown to have more of a villainous side, considering she's shown working with poachers and illegal fur traders from the beginning. What I'm trying to say here is that Cruella tries to force a backstory and motivation onto a character that really doesn't need it. Cruella doesn't hate Dalmatians. She's actually shown to really like animals in all of the movies. She's just a woman who adores furs and fashion. That should be enough. So, does Cruella work as a prequel to the 1961 animated film 101 Dalmatians? No. Does Cruella work as a prequel to the 1996 live-action 101 Dalmatians? No. Does it work as a standalone? No. Honestly, every moment in this movie that should be meaningful will only make sense to the audience if you have even a vague understanding of the original movies. If you haven't seen them, if you've never heard of it, none of it's gonna make sense. Altogether, it's a really fun, really pretty movie that fails to do what it set out to do. And that's okay. Not everything has to be a masterpiece. Honestly, Cruella's most egregious sin was not including the raccoon puppets.
Darling, red isn't your color. Give me the hat.
That's a sin.